We're now going to the most popular strand from last night, the laughometer. And for any of you watching last night, you already know Susan, who has the stupidest laugh at the UN Climate Conference. And because climate change is basically not at all funny, because we're all going to die in a horrible way, we thought we should make a little, have a little bit of fun as we went down by trying to make Susan laugh and seeing if there is any funny joke about climate change, because I don't believe that there is. And we didn't manage to find a funny joke yesterday, but we've had absolutely loads of funny jokes sent in. But first, Richard is going to give us, he's regretting saying this, but he's going to give us his own climate change joke that he's made up in the Met Office when he was a bit bored one day looking at the computers. Go, Richard. Try and make Susan laugh.
How many climate change skeptics does it take to change a light bulb?
I don't know.
None, because I don't believe it's there.
No, you lose. Off you go, no prize for you. Mark, got one?
Yeah. I have to read this one out though, because it comes from Anna from Australia, who's emailed, "Clean coal is a total myth. It's like farting under a duvet. Everyone knows that it'll get out eventually." No,
Not a good image.
Okay. This has got an English reference that you might not get. Why should you... Does somebody else want to read this? Why should you never play Hunt the Thimble with a climate skeptic?
Hunt the thimble.
Yeah, you don't know what that is. I haven't got time to explain. Okay, so the answer is we haven't got a funny joke yet. Thanks, Susan. See you tomorrow. But actually, come back in a minute because you're going to lead us into something else that you've been doing today, the biggest ever march in the history of climate this week. The punchline is, they refuse to admit it when you're getting warmer. Susan, hang around and come back in a minute if you would. Now we're staying with the laughing a lot theme, and our next guest is Mr. Andrew Sims. Andrew, please join us. And he knows a lot about happiness, don't you? Because you've studied it and you know a lot, don't you?
Well, I have just been drinking a bottle of Danish Christmas Yuletide beer, so I'm feeling pretty merry at the moment, actually. Might not show, but I am.
Now, our point is that there is no link between climate change and happiness. There's nothing funny about climate change, but you have got a link. What's your link?
I think you might be wrong, actually. I think you might be fundamentally wrong here, because the fascinating thing, which very few people have looked into, of course, the reason we've got climate change is because we consume and produce too much crap, which requires fossil fuels to produce and consume. But a very interesting thing happens, especially in rich countries, when you look at the range of lifestyles people have. You've got people living very frugally, nicely within their limits. They might be lying because it's actually very hard to get down to one planet living, but they say they are. And you've got people right up there with TVs the size of swimming pools, 3 cars parked outside, flying around the world year after year, up at 8 planet living. But
what does 8 planet living mean?
8 planet living means that if everybody in the world wanted to live at that level of consumption, you'd need 8 planets like Earth, which is a problem, because if you looked over your shoulder recently, there don't seem to be 7 going spare. But the fascinating thing is that if you then talk to these people, these very frugal people down at 1 planet living, these very greedy people, no, they're kind of spread about, they're dotted about, usually in woods on the top of the hills and you know that kind of thing, in allotments. And then you've got these people up at 8 planet living, and you ask them, how do they feel about their lives? What's their level of life satisfaction? What's their level of well-being? And amazingly, it turns out that you're just as likely to have a high level of well-being, a high level of life satisfaction at 1 planet living as you are at 8. So if you're in a rich country and you're consuming vastly too much, driving climate change, actually you've got nothing to lose by getting rid of all that stuff, or rather, even better, not buying it in the first place.
So in other words, we're screwing the planet.
For no good reason.
And we're not even having a good time.
For the last 3 or 4 decades, our levels of economic growth, our levels of consumption have been going up and up and up and up and up like that. Our life satisfaction has flatlined, and that's because we're looking in the wrong place to find our quality of life. And the great thing is that if you get off that treadmill, stop overworking to have more income than you need, to buy more stuff than you need, if you actually did a bit less, spent more time going for walks in the woods, chatting with your mates, staying at home with your family, having a sing-song, going down the pub, blah, 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 you'd be happier, much happier.
So your thesis is, we're going to, if we...
This ain't a thesis, this is fact.
Is it? Is it fact? Is there any research backing this up?
There's a huge amount of, amazingly, there's a huge amount of research. There's time series data, as the statisticians like to say, going back several decades, showing the ebb and flow as things kind of change around you with levels of life satisfaction, and comparing that with levels of consumption. So there is a lot of data on this.
So in other words, we're going to cut emissions because we have to, because we don't want to stop climate change, and we're all going to be happier.
And here's a crazy fact, which not many people know.
This is really good news.
If you look at when there's been economic recessions, where, because through no choice of their own, people have had to consume less, people have got healthier during that time. Whether it was in Cuba after the Cold War, or in kind of Britain during the Second World War, or in any big economic recessions, you start consuming less, your health improves too. So you're happier and you're healthier. Can't lose.
Now I've noticed something.
Yeah.
Amongst all my friends who work on climate change, which is quite a lot, all my friends who work on climate change all the time are happier than all my friends who don't work on climate change all the time. Is this just my observation, or is there any basis?
Do you know what? You have stumbled across one of the latest pieces of academic research.
Finger to the pulse.
And this is no mistake. There is a psychologist working in America called Professor Tim Kasser. I'd like to point out this is not rehearsed. This is kind of a genuine throw-in.
Yeah.
Professor Tim Kasser. He studied college graduates, students, some of whom identified themselves as activists, people who were out there doing things and planning to do more stuff, campaign on these sorts of issues, and compared them with people who weren't. And the people who were activists and were planning campaigns had higher levels of personal fulfillment and were happier.
And there we have it.
We got it.
So we're going to be happier and we're going to save the planet.
It's a no-lose situation.
Do you have any climate change jokes?
I did think of one while I was sitting there, actually. This is one for the politicos.
We need Susan back.
We need the laugher.
Susan, we need you back. Just take your time thinking about it.
I'm hoping that there may be a little bit of a cultural reference to this.
Just one more joke.
Can we ask you, are you interested in politics? Have you been involved in politics? Stuff like that? Okay.
Yeah, very.
So this might be a bit of an English joke again, but how many socialist workers does it take to change the climate system? And the answer is, you don't change it, you smash it! They laughed! They laughed!
Loser! We need you, Susan. What have you been doing today?
Oh my God. I was outside with 100,000 people at the world's biggest climate march ever.
Was it really the biggest climate change march ever?
Yes, it really was.
You organised it. Come on, don't be shy, don't be coy.
I was part of the coordination group, which was a very diverse collection of organizations from Denmark and the Tick 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 campaign, Oxfam, etc.
So you don't look miserable because you're working on climate change. You look miserable because you're exhausted because you've just organised the biggest climate change march in world history.
It was there was a lot of tension because we were very nervous about how it would go, and everybody was so afraid for months and months that it could be go into violence or disarray. And the whole time we were like, stay peaceful, and it did.
Link to video.
Hello and welcome to the second daily piece of the action. We're on the way to the Climate First, People First rally in the centre of Copenhagen, which is one of 3 major days of actions across the city. Now, this rally's been organised by all of the NGOs, and it's the biggest and fluffiest of all the events. So tens of thousands of people are gathering in the square above us right now, and we're going to go check it out.
Hello again! How are you doing? Yes! Amazing! 100,000 people gathered in Copenhagen to raise their voice for a fair and ambitious and legally binding deal. Thank you for showing the respect!
Let us say to our leaders this final message. We want you to be able to go home before Christmas and look your children and your grandchildren in the eye and say, we were called upon to make some brave and courageous decisions. They must be able to look their children and the grandchildren in the eyes and say, and we did. All right.
So we're in the thick of it now. 100,000 people coming past from every single different grouping. You know, you've got the anarchists right the way through to the major political parties, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth, absolutely everyone's here. Got everyone here, including the famous Survivor Balls. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great. People love the Survivor Ball. I just hope everybody gets one soon before it's too late.